Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à PodBites.
Wait, not everyone speaks French. How about Hallo zusammen und willkommen bei PodBites?
Not everyone speaks German either. For our English listeners, hey everyone, welcome back to PodBites, where we break down complex medical topics into bite-sized pieces, perfect for your commute, coffee break, or whenever curiosity calls. I'm your host, Mamon Yaser, and today I am joined by the amazing Abdulrahman Irshad to discuss the conditions that sit right between the mind and the body. And honestly, they challenge how we think about illness itself.
Thank you for the warm introduction. We're talking about somatic symptom disorder, illness anxiety disorder, functional neurological disorder, and factitious disorder. Let's start from the very beginning. Why does the brain even turn emotions into physical symptoms? Simply put, because pain is perceived by the brain as a threat to survival. When the body feels something unfamiliar or uncomfortable, the unconscious mind activates an alert system. And it's that alert system that lives in the amygdala, which then reacts as if danger is imminent.
As if a lion is about to attack, the lion being the neurofinal, which honestly might be worse. At least the lion ends it quickly.
Yeah. Once activated, it increases fear, anxiety, irritability, agitation, and anger. It also forces attention onto the sensation itself. This combination makes the brain interpret normal or mild sensations as signs of severe illness.
And this is where thinking patterns start to change, right?
Exactly. Once fear takes over, thinking becomes catastrophic. A patient feels dizzy and immediately thinks of brain tumor. They feel abdominal pain and think of stomach cancer. They start Googling symptoms, monitoring their body, and noticing sensations they never paid attention to before. WebMD, or well nowadays it's ChatGPT, become your own personal physician who tells you you're gonna die now. This catastrophic reaction to physical sensations is the classic thinking pattern seen in somatization.
Before we talk about specific disorders, let's touch on some of the defense mechanisms that show up in psychosomatic illness.
Alright, so two mechanisms are especially important here. The first is undoing. Here, illness unconsciously functions as a form of punishment that relieves guilt. Some individuals feel they deserve to suffer because of something they believe they did wrong. Others interpret illness as a spiritual cleansing or a way to remove sins. Undoing can also appear in everyday behavior. For example, someone who feels guilty about emotional attachment outside a relationship may overcompensate with excessive gestures towards their partner. The second mechanism is regression. This involves reverting to behaviors from earlier stages of development. A person may cry easily, seek parental comfort, curl into a fetal position, or feel emotionally childlike. Regression is considered an immature defense mechanism, but it appears during overwhelming emotional stress.
Sometimes illness ends up becoming a way out of tough situations, not consciously, but quietly in the background.
Exactly. Illness can unconsciously relieve someone from obligations or social roles. Think of someone invited to a dinner they feel trapped going to. Suddenly, they feel sick. The symptom removes the pressure to decide, and the conflict dissolves on its own. This happens outside conscious awareness.
And that really sets the stage for somatization.
Right. Emotions are processed in the limbic system, but ideally, we express them through the frontal lobe by talking, reflecting, and naming how we feel. Some people were never taught how to do that. Others were discouraged or punished for showing emotion. So instead of saying, I'm scared or I'm overwhelmed, the body speaks. Headaches, abdominal pain, fatigue, that process is somatization. Psychosomatic illness becomes a way for emotions to surface when words were never allowed. This is why cognitive behavioral therapy plays a big role. It helps patients explore emotions consciously rather than expressing them through physical symptoms.
So, how common is somatic symptom disorder, Abdurrahman?
Very common. About 16% of the population experience it. It is costly, often misdiagnosed, and frequently overlooked. And the impact on daily functioning can be huge.
Let's zoom in on somatic symptom disorder itself.
Right. Somatic symptom disorder has three core features. First, one or more distressing physical symptoms. Second, excessive thoughts, anxiety, or behaviors related to those symptoms. Third, persistence for at least 6 months. Symptoms often involve neurological complaints, gastrointestinal symptoms, or sexual symptoms. Pain may be widespread and inconsistent. Many patients also have anxiety disorders. The symptoms are real, and the distress significantly affects daily life. Remember, before diagnosing SSD, clinicians must rule out medical causes with appropriate investigations.
So, there's a strong link to early life experiences.
Early attachment plays a major role in nervous system development. Healthy bonding with caregivers increases oxytocin and endorphin pathways, which help regulate stress and pain. When attachment is disrupted, fewer soothing systems develop. That increases sensitivity to emotional stress and physical discomfort later in life. This is why clinicians often ask about childhood relationships when faced with unexplained GI or neurological symptoms.
Which brings us straight to the brain-gut connection.
The brain and the gut are in constant communication. Stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, releasing cortisol and norepinephrine. These hormones increase anxiety, muscle tension, sleep problems, and pain sensitivity. In the gut, they increase motility and sensitivity. This explains why irritable bowel syndrome is so closely linked to emotional stress. Many IBS treatments target the brain rather than the gut itself.
Always found it so cool how neurotransmitters affect us. Tell me more about it.
Okay, so certain chemicals promote calm and regulation. Eating increases dopamine and endorphins, bonding and love increase oxytocin, and adequate sleep supports serotonin. If you're listening to this episode past 11 p.m., kindly close it and sleep. Chronic stress shifts the balance towards norepinephrine and cortisol that lowers pain thresholds and increases emotional reactivity.
Whoa, okay, noted. So, how does illness anxiety disorder differ from somatic symptom disorder?
So, illness anxiety disorder centers on fear of having or developing a serious illness. Physical symptoms are absent or very mild. People spend a lot of time checking their bodies, searching online, and seeking reassurance. Despite repeated normal test results, the fear sticks around. It affects males and females equally and often coexists with anxiety, depression, panic disorder, personality disorders, and substance use.
So, what's the key way we can differentiate it from somatic symptom disorder?
Right, so in somatic symptom disorder, distressing physical symptoms are present and drive the concern. In illness anxiety disorder, the focus is the idea of illness itself rather than the symptoms.
Okay, let's move on to the functional neurological disorder or conversion disorder.
Functional neurological disorder happens when emotional stress shows up as neurological symptoms. This can include paralysis, blindness, or psychogenic seizures. The limbic system processes emotional information faster than the frontal lobe. When emotional input feels overwhelming, the amygdala blocks conscious processing. The distress is redirected into physical symptoms until the brain can't tolerate the information. Patients are unaware of this process.
So, the symptom actually serves a purpose. The brain tries to protect itself. That's a bit poetic.
Definitely, yeah. It resolves an emotional crisis at an unconscious level. Symptoms may change relationship dynamics, delay difficult decisions, or reduce psychological overload.
And finally, factitious disorder.
Factitious disorder involves conscious production or falsification of symptoms. The goal is to assume the sick role and gain emotional attention. A severe form is the Munchausen by proxy, where illness is induced in another person, often a child. This is intentional and requires urgent intervention.
Ah, so like Gypsy Rose Blanchard? The case that made everybody collectively go, wait, she can walk? Okay, let's pull this together with some questions for our listeners.
Okay, a 24-year-old student suddenly develops right arm weakness after intense emotional stress. Neurological exams and imaging are normal, and she's not intentionally producing symptoms. What is the most likely diagnosis? A. Somatic symptom disorder. B. Illness anxiety disorder. C. Functional neurological disorder. Or D. Factitious disorder.
And the answer is C, functional neurological disorder. The patient's investigations were normal despite the pain she was experiencing, and the onset of pain was after an emotional, stressful period. All those signs point toward conversion disorder.
Alright, come on now. That was an easy one. Let's see if you actually understand without the answers being given to you.
Okay, try me.
A 32-year-old woman presents repeatedly with abdominal pain, bloating, and fatigue. Extensive investigations are normal. She spends hours researching illnesses online and feels anxious most of the day.
If her main distress is the pain itself and how disabling it feels, this points towards somatic symptom disorder. If her main distress is fear that she has a serious undiagnosed disease despite minimal symptoms, illness, anxiety disorder is more likely. If she suddenly develops leg weakness after a major emotional conflict and exams are normal, functional neurological disorder should be considered. And if she is intentionally creating symptoms to gain attention, factitious disorder enters the picture. Context, intent, awareness, and symptom focus help differentiate between them.
And finally, management focuses on consistency, validation, and trust. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps patients express emotions safely. Antidepressants may be used, group therapy reduces isolation, and in general, social support increases oxytocin and emotional regulation. Once serious illness is ruled out, excessive investigations should be avoided.
Wow, beautifully stated, Abdulrahman. I can see how a clinician could easily overlook all of these disorders. We should all strive to be much more intentional in our future careers.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time on PodBites. Stay curious, keep learning, and eat a pear.